Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things. Today I'm going to be doing the Try a Story tag. This is a variation of the Try a Chapter tag. The Try a Story tag was created / varied by Jen Campbell, and I will link her original video down below. And the original Try a Chapter tag was created by Malia from Book Paradise, and I will link that video down below as well. So the premise of the Try a Story tag is quite simple. You take 5 collections of short stories, you read the first story in each collection, and you talk about what you liked and what you didn't like about it, and then you use the tag to decide what short story collection to pick up next. The first of the 5 short story collections I have today to talk about is This Is How You Lose Her by Junot Diaz. I've heard Rowena Wonders and Jacob Tanner talk about this very, very highly, and I believe that they're interconnected short stories, which I love. Obviously, I'm probably not going to know that from reading the first story, but I still have high hopes for this, and I hear very good things about it. This is a short story collection I got for Christmas, so I haven't had it very long, but I'm really excited about it. The next one is In the Country by Mia Algarve, which is another recommendation from Rowena Wonders. She talks so highly about this short story collection, so highly. Nick's also read it on her recommendation and he really loved it as well, so I'm really hoping I will like this. I don't know that much about it, except that it looks at people in the Philippines and people from the Philippines living abroad. This is one that I've owned since about August last year, I think, so it's probably about time that I got to it. Next, I have Smoked Meat by Rowena Macdonald. Now, Rowena Macdonald, I have read one thing by her before. I've read a short story of hers which appeared in a collection called The Red Room, which is an anthology of short stories inspired by the Bronte sisters. I've raved about that collection on this channel before because it's really, really brilliant, and one of my favourite stories in this collection is by Rowena. And Rowena saw the video and messaged me on Twitter and asked me if I wanted a review copy of her novel, which is coming out later in 2017, and I said of course I would definitely want that, so hopefully I will be talking about that in some point in the future. I then asked her if she had any other books or short story collections out, and she very kindly sent me a copy of Smoked Meat. This was maybe in the middle of last year, maybe September, October, so it probably again is about time I read this, and I know I loved the story of hers in The Red Room. It was inspired by Villette, which is one of my favourite books, and it was just a really brilliant character study, so I'm really excited to read something more by her. Next, I have How to Breathe Underwater by Julie Oringer, which is another book I got for Christmas and mentioned in my Christmas book haul. I hear such wondrous things about this from all of BookTube. I think it's a realist short story collection about kind of growing up and being a teenager, and I just hear so many people say that it's so brilliant. I know it's one of Mercedes' favourites, and yes, I'm very, very much looking forward to trying this out. And finally is The Need for Better Regulation of Outer Space. This is a science fiction short story collection that I've heard quite a lot about on BookTube maybe like a year ago, and then I kind of haven't heard about it much since, but I am nonetheless excited to read this, and we'll see. I haven't read that many science fiction short stories before. I've read a few novels and I tend to really enjoy them, but I have read very, very few science fiction short stories, so this will be interesting and we'll see how I like it. So first I'm going to read the first story in This Is How You Lose Her by Junot Diaz. The first story is called The Sun, the Moon, the Stars. So yes, let's see how I get on with this one. I've read the first story in This Is How You Lose It, which is called The Sun, the Moon, the Stars, and this is about a guy and his girlfriend and basically the breakdown of their relationship after she discovers that he cheated on her sort of some months before. I really like the narrative style. The character's voice is done really, really well, and it's like he's just talking to you. It feels very conversational, which I liked. I thought that was done really well, and the voice is really good, and I like the kind of structure of the plot as well, and the end is quite odd, but the end is quite like touching and moving as well. So I really enjoyed that one, and I'm curious to read the rest of the collection. So yes, I like that one. We'll see how the rest go. So next I'm going to read the first story in the Country by Mia Algarve, and the first story in this is called The Contrabida. Contrabida? I think that's how you say it. This is, there's a lot more text on a page in this one, so it might take me a bit longer. Finished reading the first story in Mia Algarve's In the Country, which is called Contrabida, which I believe is Filipino for villain, or that's certainly what the story implies. So I really, really enjoyed this. I think I probably liked it more than The Sun, the Moon, the Stars in the Junot Diaz book. I think this was just a bit more, I don't know, it felt like more of a big story, I suppose, which I quite liked, and it dealt with things that were more kind of my cup of tea, I suppose. Plus the writing is really beautiful as well. It basically tells a story of a man who comes home from New York to the Philippines to see his mother and his father father because his father is on his deathbed and has liver cancer, and so he returns from New York to see them. But the story is kind of complicated, and their family dynamic is complicated by the fact that he hates his father. His father has spent all of their lives being horrible to their mother, sort of physically abusing her and being just a terrible person. And so the main character coming home feels lots of conflicting emotions about the fact that his father is dying, but also the fact that his father has treated his mother so badly. And it's just really, really interestingly dealt with. The whole kind of family dynamic and the sort of twists and turns of the plot arc were just really, really good, and it was really engaging, and the writing great. I really like the fact that the main character, the protagonist, his feelings are so conflicted, and you get the sense of his confusion and complications about the fact that he really hates his father, and he knows his father has been horrible to his mother, but also the fact that his father is dying and how that emotionally affects him. And then also the complications of the fact that he is aware that he is his father's son, and he is kind of terrified of being too much like his father. Like back in New York where he lives, he never lets his relationships last very long because he's really worried that he would act as his father would if he was in a long-term relationship with someone. The way that story explores the kind of dynamics of gender and power play within marriage is just really, really interesting, and I just thought it was a really powerful story and really kind of emotionally engaging, as well as the writing being absolutely beautiful. The next thing I'm going to be reading is the first story in Smoked Meat by Rowena Macdonald, and the first story in this is called Brian, McMurphy and Sally 2. So we'll see what that's like. I've just finished reading Brian, McMurphy and Sally 2 from Rowena Macdonald's Smoked Meat, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I think this is maybe my favourite so far, or maybe joint with the one from In the Country, I don't know, but I really enjoyed this. It had the beauty of being both hilarious but also really dark and really like sad and touching at the same time. It's set in Montreal, which was also interesting, and basically follows these two guys, Brian and McMurphy, who are artists, and they share this flat, and they're really good friends, and they have kind of planned out their whole life together, and they know how everything is, and they work together on art. So Brian draws people, McMurphy draws inanimate objects, and they have this system that's very much set in place, and they both seem very happy with their lives, and they run kind of drawing classes for other people and that kind of thing. And then one day a woman called Sally comes to their house and asks to be one of their models for one of their still life classes. Brian doesn't like Sally, but McMurphy ends up going out with her, and the way that Sally draws a wedge between Brian and McMurphy and the way that her behaviour kind of distresses Brian is just really well done. I thought Brian was such an interesting character. In fact, all three of them, and the way that their interactions unfold, it's just brilliant. Rowena writes in a really kind of deadpan way, where she writes things that are kind of said very seriously in tone, but actually are really funny, and a lot of the kind of intricacies and characterizations of these three characters are really hilarious, and the way that they interact is just really interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of this book, which maybe this month, we will see. Next, I'm going to read the first story in Julie Oringer's How to Breathe Underwater, and the first story is called Pilgrims. Right, so I've just finished reading the first story in Julie Oringer's How to Breathe Underwater, which is called Pilgrims. It follows a character called Ella, who is a little girl, I think maybe like 10, it's not really very clear, and also her and her little brother. Her mother has cancer, and in part of her kind of looking into new alternative therapies, their mother and their father have become friends with lots of people who live very different lives to them and who live a much more like kind of hippie lifestyle. And Ella and Ben and their parents go to this house to have a very different kind of Thanksgiving from normal, and they end up playing with some children who are quite weird, and everything kind of goes a bit odd. I didn't especially love this. I have very high hopes for this short story collection. I've heard so many brilliant things about this, but I didn't really enjoy the first story very much. It was one of those stories where I feel like there was something I was supposed to get that I didn't get. Like, I thought the writing was quite nice, and I thought the character of Ella and Ben and their kind of sibling relationship was done nicely, but the events of the story and the kind of plot arc of it was not something that I really enjoyed. It just felt very weird and kind of forced, like it didn't have a proper sort of narrative arc. It wasn't, I don't know, I didn't really know what it was about or what it was trying to do, so I didn't especially love it, and I don't think this is the short story collection I'll be picking up now, but I did like the writing, and I'm interested to read the rest of it, so I will hopefully read it at some point in the future. If you have read this, let me know if you liked the first story in comparison to the rest, because I hear such good things about this, but the first story was not that great for me. Next, I'm going to read the first story in The Need for Better Regulation of Outer Space by Pippa Goldsmith, and the first story in this is called Introduction to Relativity, which is only 8 pages, so I should get through this fairly quickly. Basically follows a student at a university or college who is doing a kind of introduction to relativity course, and she is basically there in order to seduce her lecturer, and the implication is that she does this a lot and that she takes a different course every term in order, just kind of purely in order to seduce her professors, which is quite like an interesting setup, and the language is really clever. There's a lot of using like the course and the examples used in the course to relate to the affair that happens, and using like the kind of language of the physics course to talk about their affair, which I thought was really cleverly done and well written. So I really enjoyed the writing. I don't think it like was as moving or as impactful as a lot of the other stories I read today, but I think partly just because it's a much shorter story, and I can tell from the like contents list that some of the other stories in the book are a bit longer. So I did enjoy that one. Probably this won't be the collection that I carry on reading this month, but I did still enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of this collection because I thought the writing was really strong. So out of the 5 short stories I read today, I'm pretty clear on which collections I think I will be carrying on with in the month of January. I will not be carrying on with, at this stage, How to Breathe Underwater or The Need for Better Regulation of Outer Space. I certainly want to read those collections in the future, but I don't think those like immediate first stories drew me in as much as the other 3. And then I think out of the other 3, I will probably, I think, be continuing with In the Country and Smoked Meat, because the stories I read from those 2 were my favourites. I did also enjoy the first story in This Is How You Lose Her, but not quite as much as the other 2, which works out quite well because these 2 are the short story collections out of those 5 that I've had the longest, so I feel that's good. I really enjoyed the stories from both of these. I really enjoyed the writing style, and like in Smoked Meat I really liked the kind of mixture of the humour and the darkness, and in The Algarve I really liked the exploration of the family dynamic and the kind of conflicting emotions that the son had towards his father, and also I liked the look at the kind of cultural differences between the United States and the Philippines. So I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of both of these short story collections, and I will let you know how I get on with them in my wrap up at the end of the month. That is all for today. I hope you have enjoyed the Try a Short Story tag. I don't think I was ever tagged in this, but maybe I was, I can't remember. Nonetheless, I'm going to tag a couple of people. I'm going to tag Olivia Pope and I'm going to tag Rowena Wonders. I don't think either of you have done it yet, but I'm sorry if you have. I feel like Olivia has definitely done the Try a Chapter tag, but I don't think you've done the Try a Story tag. Hopefully you have not done this, and I hope that if you haven't, that you will enjoy doing this in the future. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.